How did the concept of Atma Darshan grow? And how is it different from other conducted tours?
Atma Darshan happened to me the way Chanakya happened to me. You know, they say best things in your life happens when you don't plan it. It was 2001. I've been a corporate person working in some of the senior most position, some jobs that people would envy. So in 2001, I used to work in Bangalore where I used to head the regional sales of a cricket magazine. And the dot-com bust of that era, suddenly the company shut down. So I had to come back to Bombay where I live. And then I was looking out for a job and it was quite peaceful. I had a month in hand and say, let's look out what is the best. And interestingly what happened is that I was sitting with Swami Tejomananji, who is the head of Chinmaya Mission. I've been a Chinmaya Mission product. And he just casually asked me, Aajkal kya kar rahe ho? What are you doing nowadays? And I said, I'm looking out for a job. It is not that I was desperate. I said, yeah, I want a better job than what I had got. And then he suddenly casually told, Swami Chinmayananji used to tell us that youngsters like you should not think about getting jobs, you should think about creating jobs. I came back and said, oh, a spiritual message from a spiritual master. I did not know because I don't come from a business background. I mean, typically you are educated, you have to move from one job to another. But it triggered me, and I remember that day very, very clearly. I got up in the morning, just freshed up myself and said 2 hours of thinking about your life, what to do next. I just took a piece of paper and a pen and I did a self-analysis about my strength, weakness, opportunities and threat, what we call a SWOT analysis. And I started listing and saying that if you need to do a business, you should do in a particular field which is close to your heart. And of course, monies will follow. A lot of people look at the money first and then they start the business. I said that's not the right way. Look at what you believe in and the business has to be around it. So when I started listing down, I found in all the positives that I had, there were 3 things which stood out so passionately. Number 1, I have traveled all over India in some form or other. So traveling was my strength. Secondly, even in the travel, because of the Chinmaya Mission and the culture that most of us are born in, the Indian culture, wherever you travel to temples. So they say no holiday in India, including the honeymoon, is complete without going to a temple. But luckily, I had traveled to so many temples, ashrams. And third positive thing, again because of the Chinmaya Mission, I used to organize a lot of camps. So then I said, travel, spiritual, organizing. So can I combine these 3 into a business model? I went to Swami Tejomananji and I said, yes, you triggered it and I want to start a company on travel tourism. It's not going to be a commercial model in the sense you're only making money, but it will involve monies because it's a business model. And for the next few days, I had this particular, dharma sankat. Am I commercializing spirituality? Then finally I realized, no, it's not about commercializing spirituality, it's spiritualizing commerce.
Right.
So it always exists, but there is no services in a very professional manner to take you to a good temple, to a good ashram. So when Atma Darshan started, the objective was very clear. It is not about just doing air tickets or train tickets to make money, but can I help people to discover the real India, the spiritual India? Therefore, Atma Darshan's tagline is Discover Spiritual India. And I've been so fortunate that I have traveled personally, because you organize your travel, to more than 700 temples and ashrams in India. Not only me, but I have taken thousands of people. Interestingly, right from Kailash Mansarovar, where I have traveled 4 times, to Kanyakumari, from Gujarat to Assam. So I think the best thing that happened in my life, apart from the business model, is that I traveled to India. I saw the real strength of India, which is spirituality.
Excellent. In your institute, CIPL, students are taught free of cost. Is it your way of giving back to society? Is it your 1%?
CIPL. It's a dream that most of us think about, and we are fortunate that the dream got created. Today when we talk about CIPL, it's different from what we used to talk about CIPL 1 year back. 1 year back, we were thinking about this has to be done. And today we talk about this was done. Let me talk about the journey of CIPL. And a lot of friends are there, who have been contributed. I will never take the credit that it was RADHAKRISHNan's product. You talked about Atma Darshan. So there's a friend of mine called Venkat Iyer, And he said, Radha, you are spending so much time on your Chanakya. So, you have to decide about your Atma Darshan as well.
Yeah.
Then I said, Venkat, why don't you take care of it? So nice. So, I'm there in Atma Darshan, but it's more about, being at the strategic level, not at the operational level. I realized that I had to spend more time on Chanakya because the society was demanding that. That time, a very good friend of ours called Mulraj Chheda, he came in and saying that don't worry about the finances. You focus on your research. So there's a group of companies called as SPM group of companies. The mention about them is given much more in detail in my book, Corporate Chanakya. So for 2 years, I really researched thoroughly on Corporate Chanakya as a book when it came out. And then finally, the challenge that came in was that I was still an individual. You get a kick when you're called everywhere, India and abroad. You became one of the well-known trainers with a niche on Chanakya especially. But then there was always a limitation. The limitation, the fact that, will you die as one person or can you create hundreds of people like you? And that's where I remember another friend of mine, Ranjit Shetty, again from Chinmaya Mission. We used to travel together and I used to keep telling Ranjit that, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And these are all true stories. The person on the other side feels very inspired. And I remember this discussion happening. So when we were traveling together, so from the corporate world, suddenly I used to start training up the police and the people, IAS, IPS officers, the government circle. So the scale, the influence was much, much higher. When you train a company, you train 5,000 people, let's say. But if you train, let's say, an officer, it impacts 5 lakh people of the police force, let's say, or a government employee. And then he said, Arthashastra, why are you limiting it with the corporates? It's actually meant for Rajniti. Yeah, that's an interesting point. But my hands were always full. How much can you do? There have been days when I have traveled and done training programs in 3 cities on the same day. So, you have to start an institution. But that was the right progress from an individual to an institution. So that time Ranjit said that, he was also ready to commit himself for this particular project. So we brainstormed a little bit more and say how to do it. So we said, can we teach Arthashastra for politicians, which was actually written for them in our generation, the way a management school would train students to join an MBA institute? Then we said yes. We went around looking out for places, saying that let's start it like an institute in, let's say, one place. And because I've been doing a lot of training programs, one day what happened, we were going to meet Dr. Shubhada Joshi, who is currently the head of philosophy department in the University of Mumbai. And we just casually spoke to her and saying that we're planning to start an institution called CIPL, where we're going to train the future leaders of our country. Then she said, why don't you do with us? And suddenly it was a paradigm shift, saying that instead of looking at a tuition class somewhere existing in Bombay, you have got an opportunity to start the institution inside the university. And note here, it is not an affiliation. That there's a college which is affiliated to Mumbai University. We are inside the university. So we went back and said, do you want to tie up with the government? With the pluses and minuses both. Yeah. But then we realized if you want to change, we have to be part of the system as well. So we came back and CIPL rolled off in the month of July of 2010. Both of us came in and then we started saying, let us teach the complete 6,000 sutras of Arthashastra for future leaders. And then what we started doing is inviting applications, talking to people. And then the typical, the business mind, do the calculations. It's going to cost this much, this much, this much. Fortunately for us, the infrastructure cost was almost coming to very minimal because of the Mumbai University tie-up. But what interestingly happened is that when we started counting on the fees, I had this discussion with my friend Mulraj. And I said, we are looking at charging this fees. And he said, you're talking about Chanakya, the guru. Why don't you start in the model, the ancient Gurukul model, where fees should never be the criteria. Unfortunately, today education has gone to that extent that it's become commercialized. There is a pain in middle class and lower middle class. They can't afford high education, etc., etc. See, finances is required. But if a student has to be productive, my guru who taught me Arthashastra, Dr. Gangadharan Nair, he used to tell, remove 2 things from our current education system and the student will be the brightest. Number one, exams. Number two, fees.
Okay.
And if you analyze it deeply, this is where students are not productive. Today we see, the stress of the marks after exam, suicides are happening. Remove that. That doesn't mean you don't take test or evaluate. But it's not about the return 3 hours. It's about transformation rather than skill development. Second part of the remove fees. Then your only thing is open out and get the best students and make them the best. Then, when we thought about this, we were not sure. Because, questions like all the people whom we discussed this, remember, free doesn't have value.
Yes.
So what if they leave in between and go? Of course, this was the thoughts that we had. But we said, probably we are wrong. But can we do one thing? Can we start and roll off one batch, test it? If it doesn't work, let's come back to square one, which we anyway decided. But what if it works? And we started our first batch in the month of September of 2010, and the first batch of 16 students got passed out in the month of March 2011. And believe me, it works. Now what about the funding? The society funds it. We go to people who believe that this concept has to work, and they say, okay, this is my contribution, this is my contribution, this is my contribution. Surprisingly, it's not about the fees, it's the commitment the students have, the teachers have, and the society has. So let's say in this particular course, we give everything free. Food, travel, accommodation, the textbooks, the kind of visiting faculties who come. Believe me, we had faculties and professors coming from the best institutes in India, including the IIMs, to teach the students. And they said, that's my contribution. It's completely free for the food that they eat. It's free for the accommodation. But when I say travel is free, it's not just traveling here and there. We have taken them to 4 corners of India. We have taken them to Kanyakumari to see how India is different, to Kutch in Gujarat, to Assam, and even Delhi, the parliament. They have attended sessions. Now the value is much, much higher than what any course can give. In fact, it's already been equated as one of the best courses available in India, and we can compare it with the best political course ever available probably in the world, with an Indian touch. So what we have done is that we have mixed the knowledge of ancient Chanakya with a modern system. So it's not the Gurukul where you don't use technology. In fact, the presentation has to be like it's done in a modern B school or a company. And so they speak the technology way, they use Facebooks, they are active on the internet and sending messages, yet they also learn the 6,000 sutras of Arthashastra, they learn Indian philosophy, they meet leaders, political leaders, business leaders, spiritual gurus for that matter. So coming back, I think this is a solution to not only the political system but also the education system. And we've been very thankful that this example is now rolling off. We got at least invitations from 7 to 8 different universities and say, why did you do this with us? Now look at them. They don't have to invest monies. They get the brand value much higher. And the students have got placed. In fact, 2 of our students have been picked up by Narendra Modi himself. They're setting up MP's offices. So it's the best quality education and also the best recruitment you can think about.
Wonderful, really wonderful. Listening to you talk about the syllabus that you have for these students, like traveling, having to learn the Sanskrit sutras and Eastern philosophy. I mean, do you really get students with this kind of profile? What is the profile of the students who come there?
Let me admit this, that it was an experiment for us also, but we were very clear that we will never limit any student who has got the criteria to get admitted. So what were our criteria? Number one, it was beyond geographies. So we had students in the first batch coming from different parts of India, north, south, east, west. And what were our criteria? It could be a male or a female. And it was minimum graduate, and they should be in the age group of 25 to 30 years. Why 25 to 30 years? Because they are not immature, at the same time they are not very clear in their lives. So it's moldable age with a little bit of a maturity. The students that we had, graduates, but on the other hand, we even had a student who was postdoctoral. So a PhD student coming in and joining. And they were from different parts of India, as I told you. Now they went back to their particular states and they have started doing the work there. And this still continues to be open for anybody who wants to join this next batch. This will keep happening. So criteria remains very simple, 25 to 30 years, unmarried, so that they're committed, they don't worry about too much about their families. And yes, a commitment to the nation. They want to work for the country and they want to get into leadership roles, political field, etc. Afterwards, nothing else. Of course, we have a personal interview, but that is just judging. It's not like, putting barriers. We invite applications. If anybody is interested, can log into CIPL.wmv. I repeat, CIPL.wmv. Simple application. We'll scan it, call you. Yes, and you're in.
Okay. What would Chanakya's message be to today's youth? The youths today do not have role models they can follow. They are not under good governance. All the the government officials are corrupt and they are extremely bad models to follow. What would Chanakya's advice be to our modern youth?
I would quote a sutra again from the Arthashastra, which says, Rajnyo hi vratham utthanam, which means the Raja, the king, should be ever active, ready for activity. Rajnyo hi vratham, my oath is to be ever ready. Unfortunately, India being an extremely talented country, we can become what we call as Vishwaguru or Jagat Gurus. But somewhere we have a sense of laziness within us, saying that, okay, it's very important that whatever possible at our own individual level, we should be active. We may not change the world at the United Nations level. We may not even change India at, let's say, the national level. But can we change at our local level? Can I change at my house level? So, what we need to do, each one of us, we are a strength of 121 crore people. Swami Chinmayananji, my Gurudev used to tell, don't look at India as, a population of 100 crores. Imagine 200 crore hands working for one vision. So if each person does his little bit, it could be about water conservation, as we said. Can I put the tap off? Or it could be just calling up the police and saying, there is a lady lying over there, it requires help. It could be a lost child. It could be just expressing your views on any particular blog site. It's about the 1% you talk about. And I personally believe India is an extremely talented country with bad management. At individual level, we've been praised across the globe. But as a nation, we require that one bit extra. So I suggest go back and think, what can I do at my level? The 1%, it really impressed me. Immediately got connected with RADHAKRISHNA Paramahamsa's message. Take one step towards God and he takes 10 steps towards you. So take just 1%, one step, and I'm sure the nation will grow and the world will be better.
Management Guru RADHAKRISHNAN Pillai is quietly doing his 1% towards society. This chat show, Your 1%, also gets a stamp of approval from Chanakya. In Book 7, Chapter 17, verse 32, he says, make sure that you record the good work done by the heroes of society in order to inspire others. Your 1% will always make the effort to bring to you unknown facets about well-known faces and inspiring people. Till we meet again next week with a new guest is goodbye for now.